Welcome to the Planeswalker Project.
Hello Magic the Gathering community, how are you all today? I want to take some time to talk about perhaps the most vital part of your Commander game, and your deck building strategy, which is ramp. All of the best decks in the format utilize ramp to some extent, and while not every color has access to optimal ramp spells, we're going to go over some methods that you can use to better ramp up your game. Let's go. To start off, we have to ask the question, what is ramp? Well, normally you're restricted to one land drop per turn, so along that logic, on turn 1 you'll have 1 mana at your disposal, turn 2 you'll have 2 mana, and so on. Ideally, you will want to drop a land each turn, as it's highly likely your opponents will be doing so each turn as well. One way to gain the upper hand over your opponents is to have more lands in play sooner, to get to casting your spells quicker. When you use spells and abilities like the ones we'll discuss in this video to grow your mana pool quicker, you are ramping. Mana ramp comes in a number of forms. The most common and easy way to include ramp is in the form of spells like Rampant Growth. These spells will give you the ability to put a land from your library into play, oftentimes tapped with little to no other drawbacks. And there are plenty of spells that will let you put lands from your library into play. Should your deck be running green in any capacity, you will have the best access to these spells. In fact, I would say green has the best mana ramp in the game. Cards like Exploration and Burgeoning give you a ton of value in the early game land drops, far greater than the usual once per turn. But what if you don't run green? Other colors have varying degrees of mana ramp, from some to none at all. Let's look at the next best color for ramp, which is black. Black has perhaps the most explosive ramp, with cards such as Cabal Coffers and Crypt of Agadeem. The two lands on their own can produce a lot of black mana. Blue, white, and red unfortunately don't have nearly as much access to ramp from their spells or their lands. Red and black both have access to cards referred to as rituals, which for the cost of their casting, you get a few extra mana, like Desperate Ritual. These might not have nearly as much impact as something like Cultivate that gives you long time value, but in decks like red where ramp is nearly non-existent, you can consider them as options if nothing else. Soul Ring is always an option to include. In fact, unless your deck specifically does not want any colorless mana, as such in the case of something like Animar, Soul Ring should be the first go-to for mana ramp. There's a ton of mana rocks, which are artifacts that you can tap for either colored or colorless mana, depending on the card, that you can utilize. Signets are ideal to include for multicolor decks, offering you a trade-off of 1 mana for a mana of any of 2 colors. Thran Dynamo and Grim Monolith gives you extra mana, but are either rather expensive or they come with drawbacks that might limit their use. We also have some lands that offer some ramp utility that can be proven really useful in non-green decks. Nykthos Shrine to Nyx is a prime example of a land that'll give you extra mana. Moving past lands and artifacts, we do have some creatures that produce mana. Of course, green wins here again, being the color of mana dorks. Llanowar Elves and Sisters, Birds of Paradise, and even non-green mana producers such as Elves of Deep Shadow and Absence Pilgrim are great here. The Mirror Cycle is also useful here. They all have different colors of mana that they each produce. Again, a lot of the necessity of these cards depends on what your deck's colors and mana requirements are. Let's take a look at some mana dorks not in green that you may need to consider for your deck. Agent of Stromgald is a red creature that can trade a red mana for a black mana. Apprentice Wizard lets you play a blue mana and tap it for 3 mana. Blood Celebrant lets you pay a black and 1 life to make any color mana. Eldrazi that spawn tokens like Emrakul's Hatcher are also useful as ramp, though I wouldn't really consider them mana dorks. Generator Servant produces 2 colorless mana for creature spells, and it also gives them haste. Grand Architect is great in artifact decks, making any blue creature into an artifact casting Soul Ring. There's plenty more, but as you can see, the level of ramp that you get from non-green colors just isn't nearly as fruitful as it is in green. There's always either a drawback or an additional cost to produce extra mana that green really doesn't have. So should you be running a deck that utilizes no green, you'll definitely need to look at some of the options for getting that extra mana on the board early game. If each other player manages to ramp in some way, shape, or form and you didn't run ramp or you didn't draw into any, you may find yourself at quite the disadvantage. Being able to play that big spell a turn or two earlier because you ramped will often give you a bit of an edge over the rest of the table. Now then, my Commander players, how do you prefer to ramp in your deck? Let's help the other players out by letting us know in the comments. I want to hear your methods of ramping mana, or how you work to get extra mana onto the board, especially if you don't run green at all. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, remember to hit that like button, check out our Patreon page if you'd like to help support the channel improve, and subscribe to our YouTube page for more videos like this one. And with that, I will see you at the next upkeep.